Normally I would say, stand as you are able for the reading of our gospel. But we're going to sit and listen to Carolyn read our gospel this morning.
The gospel is John 20, verses 1 through 8. Okay, sorry. It starts with the empty tomb. Early on the first day of our week, while it was dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter, who was behind him, arrived and went into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside. He saw and believed. He still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. The next part is where Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene. Then the disciples went back to their homes, but Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. Asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. "Woman," he said, "why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet returned to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am returning to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them that he had said these things to her.
Today you're going to hear a message which you probably won't read about in the New Testament, the Old Testament, or any history book. But it's the day Jesus came to Salem, right here in Salem, Oregon.
Right.
Now, in order to tell this story, we have to back up a week. We have to go back to Saturday before Palm Sunday. And Jesus is over in Bend walking the desert. And we're right there with him. And he decides to go to Salem. He says, "I want to go to the capital." So they said, "Well, how are we going to get there?" Matt says, "Jesus, how are we going to get there? I'll run ahead and I'll get us a Pope mobile or a limousine." Jesus says, "No, we're walking. We don't ride. We're going to walk to Salem." So they start across the mountains and they go through sisters. And they're preaching and telling, Jesus is telling his stories along the way, and we're right there with him, walking with him, right? Gets about out to State, and then he says to Richard, "Richard, run ahead." I don't think Richard's run very far. He says, "Richard, run ahead. We need a place to eat when we get there." We say, "Oh, great, we'll go to the Red Lion. I love to eat at the Red Lion." And Jesus says, "No, no, no. We're not going to the Red Lion. I want to go to the Rita Opera House, and I want Mexican food tonight. You're going to Marcos. He's a good man. You get that long table over there to the side, and we're going to eat dinner there with ordinary folks. I said, okay. So Richard takes off. We finally all make it into Salem. And just like when Jesus rode into Jerusalem on the donkey, he's walking into Salem. And people are out there on the streets hollering and waving, Hosanna, Hosanna, the King has arrived. Waving palms and branches, and the news are out there taking pictures. And everybody is happy to see Jesus. We go to Marcos. We go upstairs and we sit down. And Jesus says, orders dinner for us, tacos and burritos and enchiladas and rice and fish taco. You know. And Jesus says, wait a minute. He says, Marnie, run downstairs. You get those people on the street, those street kids, people that are homeless, you bring them up here, they're going to eat with us. Marnie goes down and brings up a whole bunch, fills the restaurant with people. We all share a meal together. And as the night goes by, and people start to leave, who's left but Jesus, the disciples, and Salem Spirit of Life? Mary, his mother, John, his cousin, Mary Magdalene, and we're all sitting around. And Jesus takes a simple loaf of bread and he breaks it. He said, this is my body. Take and eat and share. He passes the bread around, and then he takes the cup. And he raises the cup up and he gives thanks to the Father. And he says, this is the blood of the new covenant, the blood which is about to be shed for each of you. Take this and drink it. And we share that meal, that first communion. And we celebrate that every Sunday here at Salem Spirit of Life. Every Sunday we reenact that last meal. Okay. Now the Bible doesn't tell us what happened after that meal immediately. Right? It doesn't say where they went. But I would assume that they left the restaurant and they went over to the mission or Flop House, because they didn't stay in the finest places. They stayed with people who were poor. And I would imagine that they slept there. And the next morning when they get up, Jesus says, I want to go to the garden. I want to go to Busch Garden. And so they walk up the street to Busch Garden. And Jesus leaves us, all of us, he says, wait here and see. I'll be back. And he goes off to a garden to find a private place where we all go when we want time alone. Goes to a private place to have a prayer. And goes over and he has his time with his Father. And he's seeing what is about to happen. And he asks his Father, is there any way that this cup could be taken away? The suffering that he is going to go through. But he says, that's your will, Dad, that's your will. And he comes back to that entrance of Busch Park. Okay, guys, you partied all night. You couldn't stay awake with me for just a few minutes and pray with me. You had to fall asleep from partying too much. And about that time, the mob is coming from downtown Salem. And the mob gets there and takes Jesus away, takes Jesus to the Capitol building. And where are we? We probably ran home to take cover in our houses.